Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to do another piece of writing feedback. We have a writing task 1. Let's have a look at this task first of all. I will look at the picture in more detail, but let's have a look. The bar chart shows the percentages of the UK workforce in 5 major industries in 1841 and 2011. So 2 times, both of them are past times, so we shouldn't be using present perfect here. We should be using past simple, but okay. Let's not worry too much about grammar. Let's just read it again. The bar chart, we have a bar chart, shows the percentages, so how many people in terms of percent of the UK workforce, not the UK population, but the UK workforce. So where did people in the UK work in 1841 and where did they work in 2011? As always, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. This is an important thing, to select the main features and to explain them, and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, make comparisons where relevant. Is it relevant to make comparisons here? Yes, we can make comparisons between the different industries, manufacturing, services, agriculture, and so on. We can also make comparisons between the years 1841 and 2011. But let's take a look at this picture in just a little bit more detail. That should be visible now, right? Yeah. All right. So on the left here, going up on this axis, we see the percentage, 0 to 100%, nothing surprising there. We get 5 industries: manufacturing, services, agriculture and fishing, construction, and energy and water. An important thing here is sometimes, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes candidates try to explain, the reasons why services have become more popular or the reason why manufacturing has dropped, like due to outsourcing of industry or something like this. In IELTS Writing Task 1, you don't need to speculate. You don't need to come up with creative ideas to explain why the figures are the way they are. You only need to put into words the information that you have in this infograph. So, we're always looking, you can write a 3-paragraph structure or a 4-paragraph structure. Most people nowadays go with the 4-paragraph structure. That's what all the online gurus say. Most of the textbooks, like Complete IELTS and stuff like this, they usually favor the 3-paragraph structure. From an examiner's point of view, as long as the paragraphing is relevant, it doesn't make a difference if you use 3 paragraphs or 4 paragraphs. And I don't even know which one I prefer. Sometimes I write in 3, sometimes in 4. Anyway, so since 4 paragraphs seems to be the most popular option, the first paragraph, we want just a nice, simple paraphrase of this part. Now, in writing part 2, I'm not a big fan of these mechanical paraphrases, but in writing part 1, absolutely fine just to have a mechanical paraphrase of this. So instead of the bar chart shows, okay, the bar chart gives information about how many people in the UK workforce worked in 5 different industries. The first set of data gives information about 1841, while the other talks about 2011 or something like that. Any type of mechanical paraphrase. My paraphrase there wasn't great. That's fine. I'm not doing this task. I'm not thinking about it. But, a simple paraphrase. What does the bar chart show? We might include details of the 5 industries, or we might just say 5 industries. Certainly we want to include the fact that there are 2 periods depicted. Firstly 1841, secondly 2011. Great. Then the next paragraph should be our overview. So we must have some overview, the general picture. In the overview, we want to mention our 2 key features, but we don't want to give details. So we really should be thinking immediately about the key features. And again, I'll go back to this one. So what are the key features here? Well, there are a few. How are we going to break this down? What stands out to me immediately is the rise in the percentage of people who worked in services in 2011, who worked in the service sector. That's quite a big jump, right? Almost threefold, 33% to 81%. The other thing that is significant is the drop in manufacturing from 36% to 9%. Now, in terms of percentage points, the energy water sector also fell quite a lot in terms of the proportion. But for me, going from 3 to 1, it doesn't stand out as much as going from like 35% to 9%, going from more than a third to just under 10%. And notice the variety, the flexibility in my language there, just over a third to under 10%, right? So I'm using fractions, using percentages, and so on. You could break this down in. So we're always thinking about how we would split it, or at least I'm always thinking about how I would split it into two chunks of information, right? So then chunk of information, I can have one paragraph to talk about that, and then another chunk of information, a paragraph to talk about that. You could break it down into years, 1840, like one paragraph talking about 1841, the other about 2011. But I think I would go with big changes and small changes. I think I would have one paragraph detailing the major changes, so talking about services and manufacturing, maybe adding a point about agriculture and fishing too. And then the second paragraph, I would talk about those things, those sectors that haven't really seen much change, construction and energy, water. That's a logical way to break it down. And again, in writing task one, there are different ways that you can break down the information. The important thing is that we clearly explain the information in the infographic. Okay, so those are just some of my thoughts just looking at the infographic, but we are not here to listen to my thoughts. We are here to read the candidate's response. So let's have a look at this. Let's just drop this down. Okay, the bar chart gives information about, so gives information about instead of shows. Cool, like it. Gives information about the shares, not the shares, but the share. Yeah, percentage of, the share of. About the share of workforce. You haven't mentioned that it's the British workforce here, which is important. Oh, no, you have, in the UK. Sorry, you did mention it in the UK. I should read to the end of the sentence. The bar chart gives information about the share of the workforce is probably better. Share of the workforce between, okay, 5 large industries instead of major industries. Fine. In the UK in 1841 and 2011. Cool. Fine. No problem. Overall, I think this really should just be another paragraph. You have your little introduction here. Just one sentence is fine. Just make this into a nice new paragraph. That would be more logical. But anyway, overall, good signposting language to show that we are giving an overview. Overall, while the workforce was divided relatively equally. So I like this. It was divided relatively equally. We get past simple passive. We have a nice qualifying adverb, relatively, an adverb of degree, relatively equally. And then we get adverb of manner. Shows good grammar, right? Past simple and then adverb, adverb combo. But what I don't like about this is I don't agree. The workforce was divided relatively equally in 1841. Was it? Let's have a look back at that. In 1841, so manufacturing is 36, services 33. That's relatively equal. That's equal, more or less. 22%. You could say that that's, 36, 33, 22. You could say that that's relatively equal, but 5% and 3% for construction and energy, that's not, right? When you have manufacturing at 36% and you have energy at 3%, that is not a relatively equal split. So, this, it is important to get these details right. Selecting key features is important because if a person, just read this text and then looked at the picture, they would think, well, that's not true. So yeah, that does affect your task achievement here. Okay. comma, we are here. Comma, after 170 years, comma, there was a considerable gap. I love this, a considerable gap between. Really love the use of this word considerable, very academic, a significant gap, a meaningful gap, a substantial gap, a considerable gap, all good stuff. There was a considerable gap between, I'd say, the service industry. If we're using industry, we want to use the singular noun. The noun then becomes an adjective. This is a compound noun. We see it a lot in English. Noun, noun, right? Railway station, lamp post, underground train, something like this. The first noun behaves like an adjective, but it's not the services industry, it's the service industry. So we get gap between the service industry and others. I guess the others is better. So a few mistakes with articles, right? Share of the workforce should be used. The service industry should be used. The workforce should be used here. So noticeable to me that the candidate has some difficulty with articles. I know articles are tough. If I was an English student, I would hate having to learn all of this stuff. So many exceptions. Anyway. Okay, so as an overview, I don't love it just because I feel like that's just not true, that they were divided relatively equally, but that considerable gap between the service industry and others, I think that is fair. So now we should get, if the work is organized logically, candidate has mentioned two key details, two key features. And what we should get now is information about the relatively equal division in 1841. We should get that in this body paragraph with statistical data to support it. Let's see if that's what we get. In 1841, good, signposting takes us right into it. Only 3% of the workforce was employed in energy. Cool, nice passive again, good vocab. In, again, the energy and water industries is probably better. So we're just missing the article again. And the figure was reported, maybe a candidate is trying too hard here, it was reported as 1%, maybe. The figure was reported 1%, sounds a bit strange. Google Docs wants to give it at, I think reported at, both fine. Reported as 1% in 2011. Okay, but that's a bit strange, right? Because you've mentioned your key feature here, while workforce was divided relatively equally in 1841, surely you want your body paragraph to focus on this key feature? So there's a little bit of a strange gap between what you say are the key features in the overview and then what you have in your body paragraph. So usually in our overview, we want like an overview, two key features, and then body paragraph 1, we want key feature 1, and then body paragraph 2, key feature 2, right? But if you're talking about 2011 here, it's not, doesn't quite match with what you've said is a key feature here. But okay, let's keep going. 5% and 8% of the labor force worked in building industry. Again, the building industry, kind of trying to use paraphrasing instead of construction, the building industry in the 1840s. So again, with decades, we use article the in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 1780s, and so on. And 2010s, respectively. Okay, good use of respectively. That's nice. What stands out? Maybe it's okay. These cleft sentences in academic writing, maybe it's okay. I don't love it. I feel like they're great, these cleft sentences in conversational speech. Like what I like most about is in academic writing, but okay. What stands out is that almost 1/4 of workers were employed in agriculture fishing in the middle of the 19th century. Again, we need articles with centuries. And in the early decades of the 21st century, again, article, the number fell to a mere 1%. So this is strange, a strange rule in English. Usually with percentages, we don't use an article, right? It fell to 2%, it fell to 5%. But once we put an adjective before it, it fell to a mere 1%. It rose to a staggering 79%. So it's a strange little rule with articles, but it exists. Okay, just a few thoughts on this paragraph. For me, the candidate is trying to do too much. You do not need to report every bit of information here. And it really feels to me like the candidate is trying to explain all 5 sectors with both of the years. The task is to select the key features, not to speak about everything. So yeah, for me, the candidate is just trying to do too much. And that makes, there's something written, I think, in the band descriptors for band 5 about like the mechanical relaying or the mechanical reporting of information. And when you just focus on like quantity, just trying to explain every detail, it can make it mechanical. You're certainly above band 5 for task achievement, no doubt about that. But this paragraph does feel a little bit mechanical. Anyway, moving to the next paragraph. Moving next to 2 industries. I don't know, in academic, moving next to 2 industries with most workers. Again, missing the article with the superlative, the most workers or the highest number of workers. Okay, moving next to 2 industries with the most workers in 1841, manufacturing and services. Maybe false. It's strange. No, it should be a comma. Okay. The number of workers in the former industry, again, problem with articles, saw a 4-fold. Really like this. And I like this use of see. Good. Experiential verb. I studied something called systemic functional linguistics, and they broke down all of the different verb categories. That was a long time ago, a long time ago. Anyway, I like this. Saw a 4-fold decrease. That's really, really good, precise language. But let's just check that that is the case. So the former, have to do a bit of referencing here. The former, so that is manufacturing. Services is latter. Manufacturing is former. Did we see a 4-fold decrease in manufacturing? Manufacturing went from 36 to 9. Yes, we do. An exact 4-fold decrease. Very nice, precise vocab. Over the given period, really love this use of given. Nice. From 36% to 9%. Good. Moving on to the latter, cool, nice cohesion here, mentioning the former, now moving on to the latter. Just over 80% of the total workforce had a job in this industry in 2011. And we get, and this figure experienced a significant increase. You could have just something a bit more cohesive, like compared to, yeah. And this is just, so we're talking now, let me make sure I'm getting this right. We're talking about the services. Just over 80% of the total workforce, okay, in 2011. And this figure experienced a significant increase of 48%. Yeah, but when you say it experienced a significant increase, to me, that feels like after 2011. So I'm not sure about the way that you present the information. You might want to start with the number in 1841 and then say it experienced a significant increase of 48%, rising to 80% or something like that. And then again, we get over the 170-year period. Okay, so for me, there's just a little bit the way that the work is presented is not always logical. I think there should have been a new paragraph there. I don't think necessarily the body paragraphs match with the key features mentioned in the overview, and that will affect your coherence and cohesion just a little bit. The key features have been, you have used statistical data to back up the key features. I feel like you are using too much data. You're trying to cover too many things, or you're actually trying to cover every bit of information in the infograph, and you just don't need to do that. But let's give some marks. The exciting part. Okay, so first of all, task achievement. Now let's just call it TA, task achievement. What do we have here? So apart from the fact that I don't agree with this thing, divided relatively equally, I do think key features have been selected. They have been supported by data. However, I don't love the fact that too much information has been given, and it feels like it's slightly mechanical the way that it's presented. So I'm between the 6 and the 7, but I'm going to award a 6. Coherence and cohesion. Okay, what do we have here? Paragraphing is, like I mentioned before, paragraphing isn't appropriate. The way the work is organized with the information given in the overview compared to the information in the body paragraph, that's not overly logical. However, we do get nice signposting language in 1841, moving to the next two industries, fine. We get this respectively. We get some former and also latter. That's good cohesion. Simple connectives like and, fine, yeah, so, and we get overall. So, there is a range of connectives and a range of discourse markers, and we do get reference. Yeah, I think I'm going to award, I think, and this is a nice little point about examiners and how we think sometimes, right? So I'd probably want to give TA 6.5, but I can't. So I think, okay, I'll give it 6. Then when I come to coherence and cohesion, I want to give it 6.5. And I think, well, I can't. But because I gave 6 and not 7 for task achievement, I just think, oh, well, I'll give 7 for coherence and cohesion. We're not supposed to do it, but everybody does it. And in fact, even in my examiner training, I was told to mark like this. But okay. So yeah, both of these seem to be between the 6 and the 7. Lexical resource. Candidates lexical resource is very strong. I love this fourfold decrease, the given period. It's quite academic. This respectively. Not always, like building industry sounds a bit strange. Services industry sounds a little bit strange. Shares instead of share of workforce sounds just a little bit off, but I do think we have enough lexical resource for an 8, and so I'm going to give an 8. And for grammatical range and accuracy, again, we have a lot of variety with sentence types. We get complex sentences, we get moving comma so we get participle clause, main clause, cool, all of that's good. We get cleft sentence clause. I don't love cleft sentences in academic writing, but okay, does show some complexity in grammar. Not too many mistakes in terms of like different kinds of mistakes. However, the articles are crippling the score. Now, for me, I do see enough evidence to give a 7, and that's the score that I'm going to give. In general, if the candidate managed to control their articles better, I think we would definitely be looking at an 8, not a 7. But for me, this grammatical range and accuracy is a 7 because of those mistakes with articles. So any tips for this candidate? First, I would say, nice simple thing. Keep your introduction nice and short, which you've done, but just make another paragraph for the overview. It helps the examiner and it helps the reader in general to understand that we're moving on from introduction to overview. Secondly, and this is a critical point, when you're selecting, I'm going to do this. When you're selecting your key features, I think you know what I'm going to say. Try to have your body paragraphs match, right? So if this is key feature one, then use a body paragraph to talk about key feature one. And if this is key feature two, use a body paragraph to talk about key feature two. Don't try to explain every last piece of information. Sometimes in process diagrams, you can do that. Sometimes in bar charts without a lot of information, you can do it. But, part of this task, part of what we want to see is candidates, effectively selecting the key features, understanding what they should include, and also importantly what they decide not to include. That shows this academic skill of selecting key features. Articles, I know it's tough, but if you want to do some grammar work, go and learn articles. A lot of your points are quite easy to fix, like we use the when we talk about centuries, we use the when we talk about decades. Other articles, like when we use the before or after of, that can be tough. So, some of these mistakes with articles you can fix like this. Other mistakes with articles will be, they're stubborn. But yeah, articles are a problem. So overall, strong. Overall, a score of 7.0. Yeah, 6, 7, 8, 7. That's a score of 7.0, with a little bit of work on task achievement, which I think will be easy for this candidate to do. I would expect this candidate to be pushing that 7.5. I don't, maybe, is it possible for the candidate to get an 8? Maybe if the candidate takes the test in 6 months, maybe. But I think if the candidate takes the test in the next month or 6 weeks, I would expect the candidate to get 7.0 or 7.5. Yeah, those are my thoughts. As always, please do let me know if you think I'm too generous or too harsh with my marking. Statistical evidence suggests that my marking is, more or less accurate. I have checked my scores against the candidates who took the test for real. So anyway, and also if you would like me to check your writing, or if you would like a free speaking test with feedback, then information on how you can get this is given in my Telegram chat, Expert Examiner. I would say about 50% of the comments are, how do I get a writing check? How do I get a speaking test? And I guarantee in the comments section here, there will be questions that ask, how do I send you my writing? How do I request a speaking test? Well, information is given on my Telegram channel. Basically, when I have some free time, I write on the Telegram channel and say, hey, who wants a speaking test? Or hey, who wants a writing check? Then in a few minutes, I select one of the winners, and then that person gets it, right? That's how it works. Please don't ask me in the comments. I know nobody's watching at this point, and they will just ask me anyway. I'll leave it there. Have a wonderful evening. See you all very soon. Bye bye.